Hi everybody, it's Andrew from Collective Intelligence. Now, a lot of people have asked me on my videos why particular features that I'm using aren't in their version of Ableton. And a lot of it will come down to the fact that Ableton has different tiers of usability, and they sort of trickle down their content to make sort of like a price point that's available to a lot of different people. So if you don't know anything about the different versions of Ableton, I'm going to tell you there's four, right? So there's Ableton Lite, there's Ableton Intro, there's Ableton Standard, and then there's Ableton Suite. And each of these have different people that they're aimed towards and different costs associated with purchasing that version of Ableton. So starting right at the beginning, Ableton Lite was introduced and has been sort of provided to a lot of people that are buying little MIDI controllers for the first time. So if you buy something by Novation, for example, if you bought a Launchpad, they'll give you Ableton Lite bundled with that to encourage you to also purchase Ableton as a software and use that in conjunction with the MIDI instrument. So that is a free version of Ableton. You need a serial to access it, but it's free and it gives you very limited features. So you're only able to use a maximum of like 8 different channels. So that really restricts your creativity. And I'm going to do some videos on how that restricts your creativity in positive ways rather than looking at that as though it's something that's going to hold you back, because it's not. And then beyond Lite, you start looking at Intro. Right? Now, Intro is still a limited version of Ableton. You purchase it and you buy it, you own a license to it, but it doesn't come with absolutely everything that's packed into Ableton. And what we'll do is we'll just navigate over to the Ableton page, and I'm going to talk to you about the features. Now, obviously, anybody can access this website. So what's the point in me even making a video on it when it's just public info? Well, I can actually talk to you about how relevant certain features are for my production. Now, bearing in mind that now I've got, at least 6 years of production under my belt, I'm not using, all the same stuff that I used when I was a beginner, but I do remember what I used and how user-friendly it was when I was first starting, and I'm going to talk to you about that. So let's jump. I'll pop down into the corner here, and then we'll jump over to this page, right? So you can see Intro, Standard, and Suite. So I run Ableton Suite. I've got the full version of Ableton. And the key features are outlined here for the differences between Intro, Standard, and Suite, right? Oh, and by the way, sorry, there are 5 versions of Ableton. There's the demo mode. So the demo is going to actually allow you to do a bunch of things, but it's not going to let you save anything. So you can't actually save and bring that back. So anyway, key features, essentials at a great price is what they call it, right? So you can have up to 16 audio and MIDI tracks. So you're not as limited as Ableton Lite. You can have 8 scenes. So this is referring to scenes inside of Ableton's session view. You can have 2 send and return tracks. Now, that's not too much of a big deal if you're a beginner. You won't be utilizing that too much. But if you're, if you're a mix engineer, or if you're somebody who's, already got a bit of experience and you're just deciding what you're going to buy, I feel like you're going to be limited already by this. Now, by all means, if you wanted to try Ableton, you can actually just buy the Intro at a cheaper price, see whether you like it, and then you could actually update your license to Suite or Standard, which would unlock the rest of the features, right? So there's 8 mono audio input channels and output channels. So this is how many things you can have running into Ableton and out of Ableton simultaneously. So if you've got lots of synthesizers or you've got lots of guitars and blah, 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 then you will be limited by that. It's going to allow you to capture MIDI. So if you're playing on a MIDI keyboard, cool, you can record it in. And it gives you access to all of the warp modes, but you'll see over here what you're sort of missing out on. So audio slicing and audio to MIDI, which can be quite a handy feature. So moving over to the Standard, well, let's talk our way through the entire amount of features here. So sounds, you get about 5 gigabytes of sounds that Ableton just have in their library, right? So, you know, that's a decent amount of sounds. Of course, 70 gigabytes is far more impressive, but you'll be overwhelmed by all of the possibilities. It's not necessarily the best way to go about things, but it can be healthy to sort of inspire a little bit of creativity. So yeah, I mean, I've never really used a lot of this, but then again, I don't really make the type of music where a lot of their sounds would fit anyway. Now, software instruments. Now, these are worth talking about because the main instrument that I've used that Ableton have actually created is an instrument called Operator, and you'll see that Operator is actually only available on Suite, the full version. I really think that Operator's a good tool, especially for the style of music that I was trying to make when I was first using Ableton, right? So we'll get to that a bit more. So you get a drum rack, you get an impulse, which is essentially a little bit of like similar like a sampler. It's meant to be like a drum sampler for like playing pads and stuff. You get an instrument rack, cool, and then you get a simpler, which is a very watered down sampler, right? So basically this is all just sampler stuff. Nothing that's actually going to synthesize sound. And then you get a bunch of audio effects. Right? I'm not going to go through all this because there's a lot of stuff, but you know, your basic, very basic stock processing, and that's actually pretty decent for what I can see is in there, right? And then MIDI effects. Now, MIDI effects pretty cool, but that's again, I don't really use too many more than that. So these ones are the pretty standard ones that I'd go to, right? But main limitations, coming back to it, being the 16 channels and the 2 sends. And then your inputs and outputs if you're really using a lot of that gear. Coming over to standard, all of a sudden you're unlocking unlimited amounts of channels and scenes. You're still limited to 12 send and returns, but that's the same in whatever version of Ableton you go with if you try to go for the fully featured suite. And then you're gaining the audio slicing, audio to MIDI. So what audio to MIDI is if you've got a piece of audio and then you want to sort of, convert that into MIDI so that you can then play it on a keyboard rather than just have it as that audio file. You can slice all the parts of the audio into a sampler essentially, and then it spreads it out across the entire keyboard. Then you can play different parts of that sample depending on the sequence on an instrument, which is pretty cool. Lots of creative potential there. You get one extra soft synth external instrument, right? Actually, and that's really important. So that allows you to hook up external synths to Ableton. So that's pretty important for you. And then you get way more effects. Not necessarily like effects that are gonna be essential. Probably the coolest addition is the fact that you get EQ8. I think EQ8 is it's really good to have like a proper EQ, and they really don't give that to you in that first version. So that's really good. But of course, you could always find a free plugin that is a multiple band EQ, not multiple band, but like multiple nodes, so that you can adjust the frequencies across a wider range of the spectrum and be more specific with it. But yeah, you get some more stuff. It's pretty cool. And then you get the same MIDI effects, right? It's a leap up. And now this is what I would be recommending to most people that were really serious. At least come in at standard, right? What does Suite really offer you that you don't get? Now, if you're a very experienced producer, you have all of your synths and you don't really think that you're going to synths and effects, and you don't think you're going to use any of the inbuilt Ableton stuff, then I don't know whether there's much of a point for you going to the suite. The standard's going to do everything. One thing that's really cool about it is you get Max for Live. Max for Live is a programming environment in which you are able to basically make your own devices, your own effects, your own synths, that sort of thing. So, it can be a cool feature to have. I've used it a lot, to be honest, because Ableton doesn't have some simple inbuilt modulation effects that would be really cool. So I use Max for Live to get those. The sound library, take it or leave it. But the instruments are pretty cool. So if you're the type of dude that just wants to tinker around with whatever Ableton's made in terms of synths, if you don't own a lot of synths already, then this could be a good place to start, because the inbuilt synths, they are pretty powerful, and Operator being the main one that I use. Sampler is a more featured sampler. Simpler is the basic version of Sampler. You get a wavetable synthesizer. This is similar to Serum. Or at least it, operates in a pretty similar way. Then you've got like analog. This is like an analog modeling synth. Impulse is Collision is a modeling synthesizer as well. They got a lot of like strange modeling synths in here. Tension and Collision being two of them. But yeah, I mean, personally right now in my production, I probably use Operator, and I use it for white noise sweeps. So, yeah, it does do pretty cool FM. It's an FM synth, so you can get some pretty cool FM leads. And then you're adding in a whole bunch of extra stuff. So if you're a modular synth dude, then you might want all the CV features. So you're going to need to have the suite to access all of that. Yeah, it gives you more stuff such as amp, cabinets, convolution reverb, which is pretty handy actually. Corpus, which is a really cool effect, kind of makes things sort of metallic. And then you get a bunch more MIDI effects, melodic steps, MIDI monitor. So these are sort of like, this can help you generate cool melodic sequences and stuff. Envelope follower is handy for modulation. LFO, extremely handy. Oh my God. Rotating rhythm generator. Yeah, these sorts of things are going to help you sort of automatically generate different sounds. So they're the three versions of Ableton. Now, it's up to you to decide which one you think is worth it. Like I said, if you're really serious about this sort of thing, if you're very experienced and you've already got all of your synths, boom, just go for the standard. You know you're going to get all of it, but you don't need maybe some of the extra fancy features. But yeah, nobody can really tell you right from wrong. So remembering, we'll recap, you've got the demo version you're allowed to use for up to 30 days. You cannot save or export anything that you do. You've got Lite. Lite is very limited. It's even more limited than this, right? And you'll be probably doing a lot of like cutting up. You could download a whole bunch of like free synths and use them. But otherwise you don't really have anything that's going to generate sound. You still... I'm not entirely sure which effects come in Ableton Lite. And to be honest with you, Ableton's really dropped the ball with Ableton Lite, because there's nowhere that you can actually find out information for what it does. If I'm just blind and I can't find it, please post that in the comments, but I haven't been able to find it. So then intro, yeah, you're starting to get serious. That's going to be pretty limiting to most people, I think. But if you're just doing it as a really like kind of on the side hobby and you don't really want to take it super seriously and you want to be sort of confined with some restrictions of the software, that's, that actually serves its purpose. Then standard, cool, yep, getting like a serious DAW, and then sweet, shebang, the whole thing. So hopefully that has helped you guys understand the different parts of Ableton. There are other things that aren't included that they don't actually write in here, such as the groove pool. I think the groove pool is only available in certain versions of Ableton as well. Sweet, I can vouch for. It's certainly available. But yeah, hopefully that shines a little bit of light on things and you get a bit of clarity over what all of these confusing different versions mean. And I will see you guys in another video. Take care.